The AS-1 has two voltage-controlled oscillators. The oscillators generate waveforms with various harmonic content. This forms the base of all sounds produced by the AS-1. There's also a noise oscillator and a sub-oscillator. You can use the mixer section to mix different oscillators together to synthesize your own sounds. Start with the preset to see how the mixer works. You can use the mixer to control the levels of the 4 different oscillators. To access the mixer from the menu, use the parameter control to scroll to the mixer section. Using the shift button, we can scroll through each parameter category, meaning much faster access to the mixer. First is Oscillator 1. Using the value control, you can go from 0 to 127. You can do the same for Oscillator 2. And you've got sub-level. Like the first 2 oscillators, you can adjust sub from 0 to 127. The sub-oscillator generates a triangle wave that's 1 octave lower than the pitch of Oscillator 1. You can use the sub-oscillator to add extra weight or to fatten up sounds without changing their overall harmonic content. Finally, you have noise level. Adding white noise to your sound can be great for percussive sounds or sound effects. Adjust the noise from 0 to 127. Now take a look at the oscillators. To load a basic patch, press Global, scroll to 23, Basic Program, then press Latch. To access all the oscillator settings, use the parameter control to scroll to Oscillator 1. The first setting is Frequency. This is the basic pitch of the oscillator. This means the lowest key on the middle octave will be the pitch that is set. You can move this up or down depending on which frequency range you want the oscillator to sit in. If you're creating a bass preset, then you may want to lower this, or if you're creating a lead or pad, you may want to raise it. Next in the menu is the oscillator wave shape. You can choose from a triangle wave, sawtooth wave, and a pulse wave, and you can smoothly transition between these wave shapes too. When the screen displays T, parameter number S, this is the shape between triangle and saw. When the screen displays S, parameter number P, this is the shape between saw and pulse. The next setting is pulse width. This adjusts the pulse width of the pulse wave. If you set pulse width to 127, the pulse width becomes a square wave, pulse width 50%. If you set the pulse width to either 0 or 255, the pulse width becomes 0%, so there's no sound output. The next setting is sync. When set to on, it forces Oscillator 1 to restart its cycle every time Oscillator 2 starts its cycle. This adds harmonic overtones to the Oscillator 1 frequency, making a complex waveform. For this to work, we have to raise the Oscillator 2 level inside the mixer. The next settings apply to Oscillator 2. It has some of the same settings as Oscillator 1 and some different ones. Frequency works the same way as Oscillator 1. Fine lets you fine-tune the pitch. You can fine-tune the pitch up or down by a quarter tone. Detuning one of the oscillators by such a tiny amount can create a much thicker sound. Oscillator 2 has the same shape options as Oscillator 1, including pulse width adjustments. Key follow can be set on or off. When set to on, the pitch of Oscillator 2 will follow the keys you press. When set to off, it will not follow the keys, but instead plays the specified frequency of oscillator 2 on every note. When low frequency is set to on, oscillator 2 turns into a low frequency oscillator, essentially providing another LFO source for modulation. Please check out the video on modulation for more information on this. Slop is the final setting in the oscillator section, and it covers both oscillator 1 and 2. Slop adds randomised detuning to both oscillators, giving the unit the kind of slight tuning instability and warmth found on vintage analog synthesizers. Adding small amounts of slop will create a subtle vintage analog character. Adding large amounts of slop will create a more drastic out-of-tune effect.